Welcome to Creepy, the best horror storyteller on YouTube.
Story 1. The Curse of the Forbidden Knowledge.
It was Halloween night, and the moon was full. A group of 4 friends, Billy, Emily, Sarah, and Noah, were excited to go trick-or-treating. They had dressed up as superheroes, and they were eager to collect as much candy as possible. The friends walked down the street, knocking on doors and shouting trick or treat. They got lots of candy, and they were having a great time. But then, they came to a house that they had never seen before. It was an old, dilapidated house with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. The friends had heard rumors that the house was haunted, but they were too curious not to investigate. They carefully walked up the front steps and knocked on the door. There was no answer, so they tried the doorknob. It was unlocked, so they slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was dark and dusty. The friends had to use their flashlights to see where they were going. They walked through the house, exploring the different rooms. In one room, they found a pile of old books. The friends started to look through the books, and they soon found a book that was bound in black leather. The book had a strange symbol on the cover, and the friends had never seen anything like it before. They opened the book and started to read. The pages were filled with strange and disturbing text. The friends read about ancient spells and dark rituals. They soon realized that they had discovered a book of forbidden knowledge. Billy closed the book and put it back on the pile. "We should get out of here," he said. "This book is too dangerous." But the other friends were curious. They wanted to learn more about the forbidden knowledge that the book contained. "Just one more page," Emily said. "I want to see what happens next." The friends opened the book and continued to read. As they read, they began to feel strange. The air around them seemed to grow colder, and they could feel a dark presence in the room. Suddenly, the book slammed shut on its own. The friends jumped back in fright. "What happened?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Noah said. "But I don't like it." The friends turned to leave, but the door was locked. They were trapped in the house with the book of forbidden knowledge. The friends tried to break the door down, but it was no use. They were stuck. They huddled together in the room, terrified. They didn't know what to do. And then, they heard a noise. It was a low, rumbling sound, like something was coming for them. The friends huddled together even tighter, their hearts pounding in their chests. The rumbling sound got louder and louder. The friends could feel the ground shaking beneath their feet. And then, the rumbling sound stopped. The friends stood in silence, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, a cold wind blew through the room. The candles flickered and went out. The friends were plunged into darkness. They could hear something moving in the darkness. It was getting closer and closer. The friends were too scared to move. They stood there, frozen in fear. And then, they saw it. A pair of glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness. The eyes were getting closer and closer. The friends screamed in terror. And then, the lights came back on. The friends were standing alone in the room. The glowing red eyes were gone. The friends looked at each other, too scared to speak. They had just experienced something truly terrifying. They knew that they had unleashed something dark and evil. And now, they were cursed. The friends knew that they had to find a way to break the curse before it was too late. They ran out of the haunted house and back into the night. They didn't know where to go, but they knew that they couldn't stay at the house. The curse was too strong. They ran for hours, until they finally came to a library. They burst through the doors and ran to the librarian. "Help us," Billy shouted. "We're cursed." The librarian looked at them with concern. "What kind of curse?" she asked. "We read a book of forbidden knowledge," Emily said. "Now we're haunted by dark forces." The librarian nodded. "I see," she said. "Well, I may be able to help you. But first, you must tell me everything." The friends told the librarian everything that had happened. The librarian listened carefully, and when they were finished, she nodded. "I understand," she said. "The curse you have is powerful, but it can be broken. You must find the book of forbidden knowledge and destroy it." The friends looked at each other in dismay. They knew that going back to the haunted house was dangerous, but it was the only way to break the curse. "We'll do it," Billy said. "We have to." The librarian gave them a map of the haunted house. "This will help you find the book," she said. "Be careful, and good luck." The friends thanked the librarian and left the library. They walked back to the haunted house, their hearts pounding in their chests. They entered the house and made their way to the room where they had found the book. The book was still there, lying on the pile of old books. The friends slowly approached the pile of books. They could feel the dark presence in the room again. Billy reached out and picked up the book. It was heavy and cold in his hands. He opened the book and started to read. The other friends gathered around him, watching. As Billy read, the dark presence in the room grew stronger. The temperature dropped, and the air became thick with tension. The friends started to feel sick. They wanted to run away, but they knew that they had to finish reading the book. Billy finished reading the book, and he slammed it shut. The book glowed with a dark light, and then it exploded in a shower of sparks. The friends were thrown back by the force of the explosion. They landed on the ground, stunned. When they got up, they looked around. The room was filled with smoke. The friends coughed and sputtered. They could barely see. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the center of the room. The smoke cleared, and the friends saw a figure standing in the light. The figure was tall and slender. It was wearing a long white robe. The figure smiled at the friends. "You have broken the curse," it said. "You are free." The friends looked at each other in relief. They had done it. They had broken the curse. The figure bowed its head. "Thank you," it said. "And farewell." The figure disappeared in a flash of light. The friends were alone in the room. They looked at each other, and they laughed. They were free. They had survived the curse of the forbidden knowledge.
Story 2. Vampires and Bloodsuckers.
It was a cold and blustery Halloween night in the small town of Elmhaven. The wind howled through the trees, and the moon was hidden behind a thick layer of clouds. But despite the gloomy weather, the children of Elmhaven were excited. It was Halloween, after all, and that meant trick-or-treating. A group of friends, including 10-year-old Sarah, her brother Michael, and their friends Emily and Ben, gathered together to go trick-or-treating. Sarah was dressed as a witch, Michael was dressed as a ghost, Emily was dressed as a fairy, and Ben was dressed as a pirate. They were all excited to collect as much candy as possible. The children set off down the street, laughing and joking. They went to all of their favorite houses, and they soon had their bags filled with candy. They were having so much fun that they didn't even notice the mysterious stranger who was following them. The stranger was tall and thin, with pale skin and dark hair. He was wearing a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He kept his face hidden in the shadows, but the children could tell that he was watching them. At first, the children didn't think anything of the stranger. But as the night went on, they started to feel uneasy. They kept catching him out of the corner of their eye, but whenever they turned to look, he would be gone. "I don't like this," Sarah whispered to her friends. "I think that man is following us." "Me too," Michael agreed. "We should go home." But before they could turn around, the stranger stepped out into the street in front of them. He blocked their path with his outstretched arms. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" he asked in a deep, raspy voice. The children were terrified. They didn't know what to say. "You're lost, aren't you?" the stranger continued. "Don't worry, I can help you find your way home." The stranger took a step towards the children. They backed away, but he followed them. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you." But the children didn't believe him. They could see something evil in his eyes. "Run!" Sarah shouted. The children turned and ran down the street. The stranger chased after them, but he was faster. He cornered them in a dark alleyway. "Nowhere to run now," he said with a cruel smile. The children were trapped. They huddled together in fear as the stranger slowly approached them. Just when it seemed like all was lost, a mysterious old woman appeared at the entrance to the alleyway. She was holding a wooden stake in her hand. "Leave them alone," she said to the stranger. The stranger turned to look at the old woman. His eyes widened in fear. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm a vampire hunter," the old woman replied. "And I'm not going to let you hurt these children." The vampire snarled at the old woman. He leaped at her, but she was too quick for him. She staked him through the heart, and he turned to dust. The children were saved. They ran to the old woman and thanked her. "You're welcome," she said. "But be careful next time. There are dangerous creatures out there, especially on Halloween night." The children learned a valuable lesson that night. They learned that not everyone is who they seem, and that they should always be careful on Halloween night. The children were grateful to the vampire hunter for saving them. They thanked her profusely, and she smiled warmly at them. "But be careful next time," she warned them. "There are dangerous creatures out there, especially on Halloween night." The children nodded their heads in agreement. They had learned their lesson. The vampire hunter turned and disappeared into the night. The children watched her go, and then they turned to each other. "What should we do now?" Sarah asked. "I think we should go home," Michael said. "It's too dangerous to be out here." The children agreed, and they started to walk home. But as they walked, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They turned around and saw the vampire hunter standing in the shadows. She was waving at them. The children waved back, and then they continued on their way. They didn't know why the vampire hunter was still watching them, but they felt safe knowing that she was there. When the children arrived home, they told their parents everything that had happened. Their parents were shocked, but they were also relieved that their children were safe. The next day, the children went to school and told their friends about their encounter with the vampire. Their friends didn't believe them at first, but then the vampire hunter came to school and told the principal everything that had happened. The principal was shocked and horrified. He sent a letter to all of the parents in the town, warning them about the dangers of Halloween night. He also told them to keep their children indoors after dark. The children of Elmhaven learned a valuable lesson that Halloween night. They learned that not everyone is who they seem, and that there are dangerous creatures out there, especially on Halloween night. But they also learned that there are good people out there too, people who are willing to risk their lives to protect others. The vampire hunter never came back to Elmhaven, but the children never forgot her. They knew that she was out there somewhere, watching over them, keeping them safe from the creatures of the night.
Story 3. Time slips and alternate realities.
Billy loved Halloween. He loved the candy, the costumes, and the feeling of excitement in the air. But most of all, he loved the spooky stories. He would read them all night long, his heart pounding in his chest. One Halloween night, Billy and his friends went trick-or-treating in a haunted neighborhood. The houses were old and creaky, and the trees cast long, eerie shadows. Billy couldn't help but feel a little scared, but he was also excited. One house in particular caught Billy's eye. It was the biggest and oldest house on the block, and it was said to be haunted by a ghost. Billy had always wanted to go inside, but he had never been brave enough. That night, Billy decided to take a chance. He told his friends that he was going to the bathroom, but instead, he snuck up to the front door of the haunted house. He took a deep breath and knocked. No one answered. Billy knocked again, louder this time. Still no answer. Billy decided to try the doorknob. It turned easily, and the door creaked open. Billy stepped inside. The house was dark and dusty. Billy could hear the wind whistling through the cracks in the walls. He took a few hesitant steps forward. Suddenly, Billy saw light at the end of the hall. He walked towards it, his heart pounding in his chest. The light was coming from a room at the end of the hall. Billy slowly opened the door and peered inside. The room was filled with old furniture and dusty books. In the center of the room was a large table, and on the table was a mysterious door. Billy had never seen anything like it. The door was made of dark wood, and it was covered in strange symbols. Billy felt a strange pull towards the door. He knew that he shouldn't open it, but he couldn't resist. Billy reached out and touched the door. It was cold to the touch. He took a deep breath and pushed it open. Billy stepped through the door and found himself in a strange and unfamiliar place. The air was cold and damp, and the sky was a strange shade of purple. Billy looked around in confusion. He was in an alternate reality. Billy looked around in awe. He was in a strange and unfamiliar place. The air was cold and damp, and the sky was a strange shade of purple. Trees with twisted branches loomed overhead, and the ground was covered in a thick layer of mist. Billy took a few hesitant steps forward. He didn't know where he was or how to get back home. Suddenly, Billy heard a noise behind him. He turned around and saw a pair of glowing red eyes in the darkness. Billy's heart pounded in his chest. He took a step back, but the eyes followed him. Billy turned and ran. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he had to get away from the eyes. Billy ran through the forest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He could hear the creature gaining on him. Billy saw light in the distance and ran towards it. He burst through a clearing and saw a small cottage. Billy ran up to the cottage and pounded on the door. "Help!" he cried. The door opened, and an old woman peered out. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Billy," he said. "I'm lost. Can you help me?" The old woman nodded. "Come in," she said. Billy stepped inside the cottage. The old woman closed the door behind him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" the old woman asked. "I came through a door in an abandoned house," Billy said. "I'm lost in this strange place." The old woman nodded. "I see," she said. "You're in an alternate reality." "An alternate reality?" Billy repeated. "What's that?" "It's another world," the old woman said. "There are many alternate realities, each one different from the last. But how do I get back to my own reality?" Billy asked. "There's only one way," the old woman said. "You have to find the door that brought you here." "But where is it?" Billy asked. "I don't know," the old woman said. "But you must find it before it's too late." Billy thanked the old woman for her help and left the cottage. He didn't know where to go, but he knew he had to find the door back to his own reality. Billy wandered through the forest for hours. He was tired and hungry, but he couldn't give up. Suddenly, Billy heard a noise behind him. He turned around and saw the creature from before. It was tall and thin, with pale skin and glowing red eyes. Billy turned and ran. He ran as fast as he could, but the creature was faster. Billy ran into a clearing and saw the door that had brought him to the alternate reality. He ran towards it and grabbed the doorknob. Billy turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. He stepped through the door and found himself back in the abandoned house. Billy ran out of the house and into the night. He didn't look back. Billy was back in his own reality, and he was safe. He had survived the alternate reality, but he knew that he would never forget it. Billy went home and collapsed into bed. He was exhausted, but he was also relieved to be home. He closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the strange and dangerous creatures he had met in the alternate reality.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more similar horror stories.